wouldn't be offensive to me. Put 100 into this. I know it's 1/5 of what we could have, but is it going to take us, based on current consumptions, 6 years until we get our money back? Because I look at that one that's up at Tim Hortons by Walmart. No one ever uses it. Like, it just sits there, frozen block of ice. I don't see people using it. Clearly, location, location, location. If we had them down at the harbor or bolted on the side of the Sports and Rec Center, where there's probably already enough, power to support one. So there we could spend most of the grant on machines rather than having to tunnel supportive infrastructure. That might make sense. So I could probably get behind like 100 grand. I know, which is, not a lot on this one, but while we are trying to eke through savings right now, this, because it's a 50% off sale, not kind of as billed here, I probably feel more comfortable just saying no for this year, and let's spend some time building a case for some ROI. There's also some other opportunities. I know in talking with the mayor of Tiny, they got some ones put in through a connection that Tiny's mayor has, I think, in his family, that it's involved in these things. I don't want to muddy the water. I'm sure everything was done up and up over there, but he knows a guy. And Isney from NT Power, when I had lunch with them, suggested that they would be interested in helping us by putting some stations in. No, I don't know if you've explored that yet, but I don't think we're kind of like shutting down the conversation on charging stations. But maybe this one is just a little bit too big for us to bite off this round. And let's spend this year looking for other options and revisit it next year. I'm sure there's going to continue to be grants for these as the province and the feds push for electrification, even though there are some grid challenges to support wholesale adoption of that at this point. But Midland can handle it. I know we bolted it on the wall at Sports and Rec Center. We're not going to make a brownout in the arena charging a couple people's cars, but we may have trouble running infrastructure to other spots that's underserviced right now. So I'm getting the consensus here, I think, that, this is maybe too big an ask right now, but let's spend the year and look at some other options. And I'd be happy to host an intro between you and NT Power and remind him of what he shared with a lunch that Ron and I had with him back when she first started, and revisit that and see if maybe there's an opportunity there.
Through your worship to council. Yeah, we really I don't want to mention any particular companies publicly here now, but yeah, we discussed with Tiny what they were doing, who they have dealt with, what success and struggles they've had, and we've met with similar groups or reached out to similar groups, and so we are definitely again exploring what our municipal partners are doing, and among other things. So we have explored those options and those routes. This again would be typically what you're seeing is, yeah, it's revenue neutral. Typically, again, it is the only the cost to the town often is you're leasing or providing them the space, but then there's no maintenance in the future. Really, the town is hands off, other than providing them the space. These providers often to install the machines, and that's it. But it is again revenue neutral. Well, taxpayer not paying for that. Yeah, again, I apologize the way it was listed here, but yeah, the way it would be contingent on even if this amount 500 or less, if council should so choose, would only again be committed, not spent, unless we were to get the grant.
Let's drop. Councillor East.
I'm having internet issues, but I would support what Bill's saying. I really strongly feel that, especially with the Canadian government feeding Canadians, that's the direction that they're going to come. There's no doubt that there's going to be tax incentives for houses to do their own thing. I know it's inevitable that we'll have to look at doing this down the road, but I have no doubt in my mind that down the road, the government will be handing out tons of money to build infrastructure and build these machines, as they really want to see clean cars in the future. So I appreciate all the hard work on the grant, but I can't see spending that kind of money right now, knowing what's coming in the future.
All right, I think we probably beat this one to death. Is it? Oh, Madam CFO.
Sorry, one more light bulb moment. So alternatively, we could leave this in as is. we wouldn't apply for the current grant opportunity. But the way it's listed right now, that would give staff the ability to look for other grants that may be 100% funded, right? And again, that project would not go forward unless that grant was available. And or if another grant opportunity came up that maybe was 75% funded or 90% funded, staff could then come back with more information at that time. I think that's a good alternative as to just taking it out.
Counselor Ball?
I was just gonna echo that I'm also comfortable with 100 grand.
Counselor McDonald?
I think 100 grand is a little more reasonable for our start. And the fact that it would cost us money even to fill out the application for this grant. You said that we'd have to do a feasibility assessment for the grant. So we're spending money before we even know we're going to get $20. Isn't that what you said?
Through your worship to Council McDonald, we've actually currently been doing that for the last month and a half. That's how complicated it is to try to conduct the feasibility analysis that needs to be done prior to even beginning to fill out the application. There are several companies that approached us. Again, we explored lots of options that do the feasibility studies for free and on our behalf. So we have been exploring this and been conducting these studies that I'm speaking about for about the last 6 to 7 weeks at no cost to the taxpayer. They are here to help us fill out these applications, and they are just simply that complicated. But again, the companies want all of their members that they approach here to be successful with these grants, to install it, and so that they again are providing the power, the maintenance, et cetera, later years to come. But so it's no upfront cost to us. So this has been happening right now as we speak to no cost to the taxpayer.
Madam CFO suggestion is that we leave it at 500, shoot for the moon. If we get 500 awarded, staff understand that they're not going to just pull another 500 grand out of reserves. They're going to find another funding source so that it doesn't pull from our reserves before we went ahead with the project, which could mean if we can't find another funding source, we'd have to just not collect that grant, even though we got it. If that puts us back to no risk, and then it's back to as advertised on our document here, where it's 100% grant contingent, except arguably it would be, 500,000 to 500,000. I'd be content to support that since there's no risk and there's no draw. And we don't need to give any special direction because staff know that. We could get up to $500,000 in this grant if we're lucky enough to get it. And if we do, then now we need to come up with 500 grand. So staff would now beat the bushes to try and find alternative funding sources to meet that. And if all of that happened, we get a report back to us going, here's what we can do with the $1 million that we just got towards EV start charging stations in Midland. Does that sound reasonable? No risk, council? Everybody crystal clear? Councillor Beth? Councillor Prost?
Maybe I'm getting tired, but I still see that as a risk because if you're finding the other $500,000 from somewhere, it's still from our reserves. It's still money that we're trying to preserve. Am I correct?
That's fair. And so I wasn't suggesting that we necessarily find money elsewhere. It was more if we find a different grant that provides a different funding model, right? And so different grants, some are 66%, some are 100%, some are 10, right? So it just depends. But I would say, given the matching principle in this grant and council's direction, I would say we can't submit that application in good faith right now because we don't have the additional $500,000 to commit. And so we wouldn't want to submit that application.
Okay, so just to follow up, if a grant can be found that covers 100% and we don't necessarily have to put anything up, or if we do, you come back to council and find out how much?
Yes.
Okay,
Yes. And that was what I was proposing is if we leave it as is, this is 100% grant.
okay,
Those are hard to come by, but it doesn't mean they don't exist.
Right. Okay.
Yeah, we might be able to find a 75% grant and maybe council is more comfortable with a lesser ask.
Okay, thank you.
Councilor Meredith?
Yeah, so we're on through you, Mayor Gordon, to CFO. So the bottom number in the bottom number, 5,140,000. Are we adding another 500 to it? No, we would take out 500 because, right, that would be reduced by 500,000, correct? If we can the program here or don't go for the grant, right? So regardless, we're setting aside 500,000. If we get the grant, fine, we get the 500,000. If we don't get the grant, the 500,000 goes to reserves, and who knows where it's going to be spent down the line. So is that what, or where does the 500,000 come back to the taxpayers? Maybe out of the reserves, maybe that would be good. So if we don't get the grant, the 500,000 gets injected back into 2025 capital.
Through your worship, to Councillor Meredith, no, the 500,000 in there is only contingent on a grant. So if we don't get the grant, then then there is no money coming out of reserves. This is just grant funded. So we're saying if we get the grant, then we use that money from the grant. If we don't, $0 comes out of the comes out and goes back because there's no money changing hands here. This is only grant.
Yes, but the 500,000 is in the reserves and it's going to be spent on something. It's not.
Through your worship, no.
So there's
This is $0 out of reserve. So the column there saying grant contingent, it's just coming out of grant. It's not, if you look over to the right at tax supported reserves, it's 0. So this is $0 coming out of reserves.
okay. So where's the initial matching 500,000 come from?
Oh, sorry, through your worship, through the discussion, I think what the CFO is suggesting is that if we leave it in here as grant contingent only, and we're able to find something that offers us to get a grant where we don't have to pay anything out of the reserve, then we'll leave it in the budget just in case. So then should something come up this year, as you had noted, things may come up through the government. Should something come up, then we will be able to apply for it without having to come back to council, but we'll spend $0 out of reserve. And if we need to, so say we get one that gives us 500,000, but we have to put in 20, we would come back to council.
Oh, you're coming back to council?
Yes,
Okay.
if we are going to spend any money.
So right now, I see grant contingent, 500,000.
Yes.
If we were going to do another 500,000, it's not coming out of tax supported reserves. It's not coming out of rate supported gas tax, none of that. There should be a line item under there somewhere right now. If we're on the initial ask, right, the 500 and the 500, it would come under one of those categories, correct? Like you're not going to plug in 500,000 in any of those categories.
No, you are correct. In the original discussion, yes, it should have been somewhere else. We are just suggesting if it comes from grant, that is it. So we are not going to use any money without coming back to council.
Thank you. And you can do that without us setting aside in the budget? Like, because I just been told repeatedly that, in past questions that it has to be in the budget.
Through Mayor Gordon to Councillor Meredith. So it would come through as a budget amendment, right? And so again, because reserves are previous year's taxation, it's not going to amend the tax rate. We come through and say, we need another 200,000 in the capital budget. We can come in March and ask, and if council is in agreement, we could make an amendment to the budget because it's being drawn from the reserve. We can't do that if we're trying to, increase our operating budget and need another 2%. That doesn't work. But if it's a reserve contribution, or sorry, not a reserve funding situation, we can. Again, I would caution not to do that too many times in a year because it isn't. We should deal with these items now. But sort of just given the conversation, if council's not comfortable at this point in time, adding any funding from those tax supported reserves, then that would be my recommendation.
Thank you. So at one point, if we get a $350,000, grant, then we would match that with 350,000. You come to council for that new money. So in the end, we're going to be spending some kind of dollar. And where I stand right now, I think I stand with Councillor East that there's going to be programs down the line coming out with incentives to get electrified. So I'm going to leave it at that. Thank you.
Okay, except that that's not what we're talking about. So what's on the paper is that we would spend $500,000 only if we got $500,000, which means we haven't spent a penny of taxpayers' money, other than all this time talking about it, right? So yeah, but what's being suggested right now is exactly what you see on the paper. We will authorize up to $500,000 and send staff off to try and find funding. If they can find $500,000, then we'll put that $500,000 into electric vehicle charging. If they can only find 100 grand, then we'll put that into it. But it won't cost the taxpayer in Midland a penny, other than, the time involved in planning for this thing and everything. So we're back to what's actually being advertised here. No matching is involved at all. That we did talk about matching, but no one wanted to do the matching. So we are at 100% grant contingent. All we're really asking now is, do we want to authorize the installation of EV charging stations as long as it doesn't cost us anything? Yes or no? That, I think, is the crux of what we're at right now.
Can I? If I
So,
could.
Council, just let me just make sure is this correct, Madam CFO? What I
No,
just repeated?
no, because I'm pretty sure, if I may, Mr. Mayor, he has to have the council commit to matching it when he applies it. Is that right?
We're past that. We've negated that. We are on to a fully funded solution that's depicted on the screen right now. The matching thing died. None of us really wanted to do the matching thing. That involves tax dollars. We are on to a fully funded grant contingent authorization. Right now it says 500 grand. We could put any number we want on there, put $1 billion. As long as we get $1 billion of funding, we're going to put in $1 billion with EV charging stations. Like, we're beating this horse to death here. But there is no matching involved in this at all. This is simply allowing for the installation of EV charging stations as long as they're fully funded from somewhere other than the taxpayer. That's where we're at.
That's the hope. Now, is that a reality? I can't say for certain. The current grant, we do have to have a stake in the game, right? And in most grants, you do. So I don't want to sort of confuse the conversation more, but if council wishes to put some money in, we could certainly make that amendment. And yes, it would come from the tax supported reserves.
But we're not. Right now, it's, as this reads, we're drawing nothing from a reserve. It's go and try and find free money for EV charging station staff. That's what this document says in front of us, which is how we started this conversation, which it turned out not to be the case. So you are not going to apply for the matching thing. You're going to go find this unicorn that wants to throw free money at us for EV charging stations, which you probably won't find, but good luck. And that's what we're authorizing right now so we can move on. Is that a fair synopsis? Okay, got head nods. All right. So we really don't even have to vote on this because it's just going to be free money if we get it. Certainly.
Thank you, Your Worship, and not to make this more confusing, but to your point, Councillor McDonald's point, if there was a certain amount that you were willing to match right now, if that amount was 100,000, say, that is going to give us a much more increased likelihood here that we're successful with getting some sort of grants. Even the best ones are often up to 75% matched funds or a project total. So if it was even 100,000, again, if council were comfortable with that amount in terms of matching, that means that that's something for us to work with in terms of grant applications. Like you said, is there a unicorn out there at the moment? I'm not aware of one. At least $100,000 or an amount like that would mean we still can proceed with lots of the applications, just at a smaller starting point, which is, fine. But just want to throw that out there, not to confuse everyone.
So can we say if we're comfortable with that or not?
Okay, so the question is changing this to 100,000 with 50-50 matching. So 50 grand grant contingent and tax supported reserves for the other. Sorry, $100,000 grant contingent and another $100,000 in tax supported reserves, which will allow Mr. Flannery to submit for this 50-50 matching grant and roll the dice. So we need to be prepared to take 100 grand from our reserves. Is that clear? What I'm asking? All right, so hands up if you want to do that. Wah, 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 wah. Okay, so we do love the idea of like EV charging stations. We just don't want to pay for them right now. So we will, staff will continue to look for that unicorn and perhaps pursue some of these other things. Maybe you've already talked to them, but it'd be nice to have. Okay. Pedestrian crosswalks. We already know where we earmarked to that. We actually just made a change. So anyway. We got stop signs coming. Yeah, is there any next contentious item on here? Stormwater pond maintenance plan? Yep.
Through you, Mayor Gordon, to Mr. Sobel. The Javelin stormwater outfall repairs. I know we've been briefed on it before. Just want to know where that project is. Is it in motion? Is it? I know there is some urgency with that. So can you just? It's been on the back of my mind on where this is at, and I haven't really seen. But anyways, go ahead.
Through Mayor Gordon to Councillor Meredith. So both myself and our legal and our CAO are in the middle of negotiating with the Javelin folks and their side to come to an agreement on repairing it and who's doing that and what's it look like. So we're in the process. They've engaged some professionals on their end to get a more clear, we'll call it design and costing on their end so that we can kind of finish that conversation. So it's in progress. It's moved a little slower. The goal is to get through the process, and come spring when they can go do the work, is hopefully we encourage them to get out there to do the work.
Great, thank you. That's nice to hear. Thanks.
Okay, so Councillor Downer.
Through you to Mr. Sobel, is there any damage being done to our property because of that at this time? Like the next heavy rain, will it erode some of our property or?
Through Mayor Gordon to Councillor Downer, there is some significant damage on our property, and it is continuing to erode. So there is some urgency. Definitely, we have their attention now. I'll say, while it has seemed to have stabilized and it's not gotten significantly worse in the last number of months, but there is still potential every day for it to continue to get worse, especially with a January thaw that we seem to be having right now. So it is likely that come the spring thaw that it will continue to erode.
Thank you.
So we'll keep the pressure on them.
Thank you very much.
Okay, so there's effectively no material change on here other than we're deleting a line that didn't have any impact on the reserve anyway. So the 500,000. Oh yeah, if you can find it, yeah, good. Happy hunting. Yeah, free money. So yes, so we're moving on then. Councilor McDonald?
Thank you. Just clarification, what's the total engineering bottom line now?
Just, so there's no change to the engineering section. The total remains the same. Okay, so we are at operations, which is a very comprehensive list. Can we have a 5-minute bio? Thanks.
Yep, absolutely. We'll take 5. Your camera's on if they're off. Hey, everybody, welcome back. Thanks for indulging us. For the people that are still braving the online world, we are now at the operations capital. And again, just reminding our watch at home audience, this is all reserve based. None of these changes make any impact whatsoever on today's tax rate. All that stuff comes tomorrow if we were on time. But we're not. So we're going to try and pound through as much of this as we can. So we'll start at the top. Town hall HVAC replacement. Mr. Flannery.
Thank you, Your Worship. If I could, just make a suggestion. This clearly is the largest, department and as you can see by far, the largest list of capital projects. And again, this references all roads, parks, public works, and corporate asset or facility projects. So I don't know, it in the interest of time, it may not, it may be more appropriate to just take questions about particular projects, because it is such an extensive list, versus going line by line, just in the sake of time.
Okay, just the problem is the questions won't be in the order of the items, so we're gonna be bouncing all over the place. So maybe I could just walk down the list and just see if anyone has any issues or callouts quickly, and we can just deal them. Yeah, we'll start with operations corporate assets, so the town HVAC replacement. Any issues with that one?
One question, if I may, that is a tax supported reserve, not a rate supported reserve. On the back of that summary, it's under rate supported. So I just want to make sure it's tax supported. Just caught that the other day. Is that correct?
It is. That would be an error then, if it is
It-
showing as rates.
Right here.
It's an error on the sheet, not on the summary. So the
Okay.
summary and all of our projections
Yeah.
are using tax supported. It's just that summary page.
Right. Yep. Thank you.
Put on the wrong line.
Yep. No problem. Just want to make sure.
Perfect, and for clarity, there's no rate supported reserves or development charge or debt supported. These are all tax supported reserves, so taxes from yesteryear. So the town HVAC replacement, the building improvements contingency. I don't know, maybe it would be easier than just reading them. Are any counselors that have callouts that are on this list? All right, Councilor Emeritus. We'll start at the first one. Yeah, your first one, yeah.
Through you, Mayor Gordon, to staff. So I have the $30,000 for the town hall meeting, the lobby area. I have an issue for that on that one. How is that in need? I don't right now. I don't feel that's in need. Do I keep on going down my list, or do we just address that one probably?
Just
right?
deal with it
Just
one
some
at a time.
comments. Yeah.
Yeah, this is the
So,
glassed in area.
The
for-
glassed in area at the, I imagine in the hallway somewhere, maybe in the corner of, I'm not sure where, but anyways, go ahead. Any other comments?
Comments about that, Councilor McDonald?
Yes, I questioned it myself and, but I'm in support of it now because of the sensitivity and sometimes the humor of customers that are coming in. If they go in the Dominion room, there's no security there because the door is shut. And I think it's a wise investment to be able to. I went upstairs and there was 3 people there and they're all having their own different conversation. And sometimes the conversations need to be public, so, or need to be private. Or the person needs to vent, and in the hall isn't the best place. So I think it's a $30,000 well spent. I'm supporting that one.
I think our CXO can speak to this because I certainly, in my time in the office, hear the kind of exchanges that happen with multiple people talking through the window at the same time.
What about now? Oh, you can hear me. Through your worship, yes, this is a project that I requested. The customer service area can get very busy at times. And the area is, you know, people are walking in and out. We've got staff using that area. We're receiving deliveries. And if we have 4 people in the lobby, it's quite congested. It's only 3.5 meters wide at that point. So, and when we do have customers, to Councilor McDonald's point, we have customers who come in and they sometimes have difficult conversations that they have to have with staff. And, you know, to provide people with some privacy for their discussions is, it just takes them away from that lobby area. And also allows, you know, if we have a table and chairs set up in there, we can have staff sit down and talk with them. And we also have customers coming in with planning applications. And many times I've seen people pull chairs up to the counter to speak to planning staff. So if they could take them away to, you know, we did talk about that corner at the end of the hallway there. And the reason for the glass is just as to make sure that it is visible, that it is secure for both the customers and for our staff. And so that, you know, it's open, but it's there's no door. We're talking about having not a door on it, just that it, you know, it's easy egress to get out of there, and just to make it a little bit more private, but also a little bit you know, more visible, I guess you can say, rather than being in the Harbor View, or sorry, the Dominion Room. Thank you.
All right, any next ones? Yep. Anyone else that's got an exception on any of these, just put your hand up, let me know. Otherwise, it's Councillor Meredith's floor here.
Yeah, so the next one would be the town hall LED lighting conversion for $30,000. Is there an energy grant or audit done? Because I know there are energy grants out there with an audit. So is there anything particular with it's $30,000 to upgrade the LED lighting? Is another to me at this time when we're talking about reserves and depleted reserves and our taxes. So that was another, if there's a grant available for that, or because I know there is a lot of incentives right now for energy savings. I'm not sure if in municipal governance do we qualify?
Mr. Rickeld?
Thank you, Your Worship. Through you, yes, we are currently applying for and I can't remember what it's called right now, the grant for the energy upgrades in this office. That those funds would replace every single fixture here with the efficient LED ones, similar to the ones you see in the lobby now. Our current fluorescent fixtures are failing, and to replace a ballast in one unit is $109. For an LED fixture, it's $49. And not including the future energy savings on hydro.
Yep, thank you. I do know the savings in the conversion when you actually convert, but there is a cost if it's still working, then, but I'm glad to see there's, you know, you're doing your due diligence with the grants. Anybody else want to comment on that one?
Pass it over to Councillor Downer and then to Councillor Prost, then back at you, or over to Councillor Ball, perhaps.
I'd just like to say I support the office and the glass in office. I stand in support of that because I too have seen things that requires safety. Okay, I just want you to know where I stand on it.
Councillor Prost?
Can you bring the list up again, please? So going down to the seating at Little Lake Park, is that on that list? No. Hang on. How far
It-
down is it?
It is, yes. I think you just have to go down a little bit there, right? The rotary stage would be the one. Yep.
Right. Okay, I have a problem with that one. I think it can wait. I think it would be great, but I think just getting, I mean, we're getting a new sound system if it's needed, we're getting a new roof. I think this can wait for another year. People are happy sitting on the grass, and the people who can't, they bring their lawn chairs. It's kind of part of the ambiance there, right? So I wouldn't support this one. That is.
If I may, your worship, through you to Councillor Prost. So this is actually, the 149,900 is 100% grant funded. So we were able to successfully get a grant last year, to transform the hill into what you now see as the seating area, the tiered seating. And at the same time, last year, council approved a project for repairs and the installation of a band shell of the rotary stage itself. So the part one, or we'll call it A, of the project that we did last year was 100% grant funded, the whole transformation of the hill, through an OTF grant and the Rotary Club. The combined paid for the entire project. But at the same time, again, council did approve funds for this project you see here. But when staff began assessing the stage and drafting the necessary documents, we learned that the stage itself was in disrepair, much more so than we had anticipated. So there was much larger work needing to be done. We then at the same time applied for a grant, hoping to get the additional funds to actually be able to get done what we needed to get done now. And we're successful with another OTF grant. So this is actually the only additional funds, or the just under 150 you see here, and is 100% grant funded.
It's the only one on the list that's 100% grant funded. Woohoo! Good job. Yeah, that's good. No matching funds needed. Councillor Ball.
Thank you. Just to be fair, as I was, grilling the fire department, I also don't think we should be replacing the desks here either. I think that's a want, not a need. I also am wondering, again, same as we put them through the ringer, the OPP doors, is it that similar to the fire department? Are they in disrepair? How old are they? It says the expected life cycle is 20 years. How old are the ones that we have? Are they currently failing? There's no information on this listed. So can someone give me clarification?
Yeah, I think that one's driven by our tenant. We don't really have a choice, but Mr. Reichelt?
Thank you. Through your worship, as far as the desk, the $10,000 would get us two. And it's replacing our older desks, and some are original to this building we're still using. And not ergonomic and not as functional. Some are held together with duct tape and brackets. And as they get moved, they just fall apart. As far as the overhead doors downstairs, yes, they're well past their useful life. Every time you push the button, we hope it opens.
Okay, I hear IKEA has really great options for under 10 grand. Just maybe we want to relook at how high this can be. Can we adjust this cost? Seems really high for two desks.
It takes a second after you turn it on until it starts Plus the battery's dead.
Check, check.
Battery are.
Yeah, we do explore other options as well. We have tried IKEA or similar type. The chipboard type doesn't, they just don't last. And we're doing it again in a couple years.
I'm still uncomfortable with $10,000 for 2 desks, so I would be comfortable with half that.
All right, any other callouts? Councillor
Thank you.
Meredith.
Going to the overhead door replacements again. And I'm referring back to the October 31st report where there was canceled projects for that building, $48,000. Window replacement was canceled, flooring was canceled, and change rooms, washroom, canceled upgrades, I guess. That equaled 48,000. And I know what you're gonna tell me that that money's it's 2024 and that was budgeted for 2023, and I still don't understand why that money can't be allocated to here unless we're gonna reopen those canceled projects. So is that gonna happen? Are we gonna reopen those canceled projects?
If I may, through your worship, to Councillor Meredith first, just to, in general, these projects again are listed following a building condition assessment that's being done, right? So the example that you heard earlier with the fire department, there's a reason you bring in professionals to do these types of assessments. So that is a prime example as to why their overhead doors would have been recommended for replacement 2 to 3 years before one of them literally exploded and could have potentially killed someone had they been there. So there's a reason that doors like things like this, why you do a building condition assessment is for exactly that reason. That's why you bring professionals in and we follow their guidance. And they literally lay you out a 10-year plan on what should be done. And it's in theory, and you can adjust annually, which is what you saw then. So we were able to say, oh, we reassess every year. So again, as much as council approves a project, it doesn't necessarily mean we always go ahead with it. We still do our due diligence to go further look into it and decide, does that need to be done? In this case, work with the tenant and see if they, if we don't feel it necessarily now needs to be done, it didn't wear as quickly as maybe was anticipated, then we'll work with the tenant to see if they're also willing to say, push out the project, which in several cases you saw was the case. And that's why you see the return. But again, this is how, that's why you see this type of a layout on these projects laid over the time. Again, the fire department example being a prime example, and this is from the experts. This is when they're stating that these doors need to be replaced, and for that example, it's a prime reason why we should follow their expertise and advice.
Thank you. Yeah, and I get what you're saying. But there's $48,000 we budgeted for these, the BCA, building code assessment. Then we went in and you and your staff went in and reevaluated, so didn't get it right. Anyways, and you said it wasn't necessary, but we budgeted for, so that money is in reserves. And we're asking for 45,000 because this door, we don't want to, as you said, needs to get done. So this is where I have a hard time saying, okay, we got the 48,000 budgeted last year. We have the money there. We didn't do the project. You know what? And 2 years, 5 years from now, you may come back and request that again. Or you may not, I don't know. So this is the tax dollar that I'm kind of, the way we use reserves, budget time doesn't get spent, it gets put in the bank, and there's nothing coming back to the taxpayer. And we need some relief, and those, which I call a surplus, you may not call a surplus, but it's extra money that we didn't use that we budgeted for that doesn't come back and help the taxpayer. So that's where I'm kind of conflicted here, right? So I get what you're saying, but I'm just not understanding how we can't use that money to offset this. And for this particular. So
Madam CFO, perhaps you can add some color.
Thank you, Your Worship. So in short, your original question is why aren't we using that money towards this project? We are, right? And so by closing out those projects that we are not going to spend funds on, those funds are now available to use towards this project, right? And again, there's no money sort of owed back to the taxpayer because our needs are never ending, right? Our needs will always exceed the available funds, right? And so we are using those funds, not on the project that we originally thought we would, granted, but we will use them now on this project, right? And that's this continual sort of long-range planning. That's why we do this long-range planning. We're not just looking at what are our current needs. We look at the much greater picture because, we're here forever.
So had the project that you're referring to been one of these, enhancement type requests, and we taxed people to do it, and then we didn't do it, and we put the money in reserves, then I can understand what you're saying about let's return it to the taxpayer. But that isn't the case. It was a reserve funded project before that never went ahead. So the money never left the reserve. And now they're just earmarking from that same pool of money for a new project, right? What you're saying makes perfect sense if it was an enhancement or a staff request or something net new that we taxed people for and then didn't actually use. But that's not the case in any of these things. This is all reserved, and last year's operational capital stuff was all reserve based too.
funded by the taxpayer. Reserves. So I know it doesn't affect the tax rate, but the taxpayers paid for it. So, so that's what I'm fighting for. But thank you. though.
Okay, but
And I won't bring this up again, beating a dead horse here. But I just want to make it clear that I don't like the way this process is, but I think somehow if we're over budget, as I said, we could be over budget $1,500,000, just give us 1% tax relief and I'd be happy. So through those surpluses that I call surpluses that you may not see as surpluses, but I won't speak of it anymore and take up more time. Thank you.
Councillor Ball.
Thank you. I'm wondering about the replacement of vehicles and equipment. Is there anything at all that could be extended to future years? Because this is quite an extensive list of equipment.
Through your worship to Councillor Ball, again, this list was more extensive prior to our budget, draft budget processes that we go through annually, right? We sit as a team and say, here's what's been planned. Here's what's scheduled according to the best practices for replacement this year. But things can change. You didn't necessarily maybe use that one as much as you otherwise would have, or there was a major repair that was needed 2-3 years prior that has now essentially extended the life of that vehicle substantially, or at least a couple years. And so we make those tweaks annually as a team. We sit down and make sure we say, does this actually need to get replaced this year? Even though it's tentatively planned for it, sometimes you can push that out another year or two. Sometimes things that are planned for, though, at an 8-year replacement or retention cycle, need to get replaced after 6 or 7 years because things just go wrong, excessive use, etc. Some damage maybe happens. So it kind of goes both ways, but the team definitely makes that assessment every year. Whether or not it was planned doesn't just mean we throw it in here. We make that assessment every year, sit with mechanics, etc. Does this truly need to be replaced? Each of these items here truly need to be replaced. They are all beyond, I know the end of life is a joking term, but they really are. They're all much older often than is the best practice or standard. I could speak to any individual question you have on each one of them, but our team produced this list because this is what we feel needs to be replaced this year.
Okay, thank you for the due diligence in planning that and making our list a little smaller. I mean, it doesn't seem small to the taxpayer, I'm sure, but I appreciate that you cut it.
I just want to know the last time a pelican visited our community and left things worthy of sweeping. Of course, I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. It's getting late. Councillor McDonald.
I'm not quite clear on the process, but I do have 3 questions. If I may, and this one's simple. It's on page 195, the plumbing and piping repairs at 16984 Highway 12. What do we own there? The old PUC building? And is it
Correct.
being, and if I may, it's being used?
Through your worship to Councillor McDonald, yes, it is. That's a property we do own, that MPUC property at the top of the hill on Highway 12. And one of the buildings is currently being occupied by town of Midland staff, yes.
And that's the building that requires the repairs?
Correct.
If I may, there's also a request on page 201 to demolish some buildings in the old Park Depot. I think it's well, I know where, anyway, this is land surplus. Why wouldn't we sell it as is? Why would we spend $120,000?
Through your worship to Councillor McDonald, yeah, this is a project that was initially listed last year, and we've determined it actually needed an increased budget to do so properly. And why you would do that is because, you know, 120,000 you see here isn't necessarily a small investment, but in you know, theoretically here, this type of a smaller investment gives you a much larger return later if we've done some of the work ahead of time before sale. And this is a site where we had, again, park staff there for decades. There was lots of fuels, et cetera, products in the back end there. And so some of this demolition work can have a significant impact on what your return will be later.
Sorry, I never shut my mic off, so I guess I figured I was going to keep talking. I'm with all the fuel and everything, then you're going to come and tell us the land's contaminated, so it's not worth anything. So I don't know why we're spending $120,000 now.
Mr. Rickle.
Thank you, through your worship. The office building itself has been subject to severe vandalism. If we were to do nothing, just list it for sale, we couldn't show it like that. No one would be allowed inside. There is a former open well under the building that would need to be properly decommissioned by us and not by a buyer. There are other wells on site too that are due for decommission soon and be part of that demolition process. And this also includes some site cleanup too to make the property viable for sale.
Councillor Ball.
Thank you. What is the value of the land if we clean it up and list it for sale? What is the list price we would be selling it at?
Thank you. Through your worship, I have not received a market evaluation yet.
So we don't even know if the land is worth $120,000.
Thank you. It is worth more than $120,000.
Councillor Meredith.
Yeah, I had this one highlighted as well. So in last year's budget, we allocated 125,000 to demolish this the Parks building. Now we're asking for another 120. So that brings it up to $445,000 we're going to invest to demolish the building. Did I count that right? 200. Did I say 200? Did I say 400? Like 245,000. So, and that means after we sell it, and then decommission this well, is that included in this 245,000? That's what I'm going by right now. Lindsay, the Madam CFO wants to comment and
Yeah,
correct me. I
safe
think.
to say we didn't do it last year because the building is still there when I drove by
you.
it today, so I don't think we spent that money, but Madam CFO.
Thank you. No, we have not spent, so the budget was 75,000 in 2023. And we did not spend a single dollar, I believe, none of it. So we are asking for a total combined budget with this request of 195,000 to complete that work. And that is based on an RFP that went out. So we did put it out for RFP, and we were over budget. So this is our second kick at it, essentially.
So it must have been the request at the time, because it showed 125 and 23 draft budget. So we're down to 195 then that we're having invested in here. So by the time we clean and that's out the door, and we don't know what the real estate's worth. So I'd be more apt to put a for sale sign in there, because basically we're gonna need 400 and some odd thousand, let's say, because I'm pretty sure there'll be some added cost to this, surprise cost. So if we're gonna make 200 on it, we would have to price it at 400 if it's a 200. I do know we have some more land in that area, and there is probably some cleanup on that too, and that's why they haven't moved. So I'm more apt to save these funds and put a for sale sign on it and see where that goes. Thank you.
Councillor Ball?
Thank you. I think at the very least, we should have a real estate agent be assessing it to see what we would be responsible for and what we could sell as is. I think that we're just guessing right now if we don't have that. We don't have a professional opinion on this at all. So I think that, I mean, you can come back, it's out of reserve, so you can come back and ask for that once you've actually had this assessed by a real estate agent.
Okay, well, I mean, but we can leave this, because again, this is not impacting the tax rate. We can leave this on there earmarked. Staff can just, can evaluate the property as is versus what we would get for it cleaned up, and then decide if it's worth investing the money. And only then would they spend the money. And if, you know, because we put it effectively earmarked on the budget. If it turns out that it's not worth it, and you're bang on that it's just cheaper to sell it as is, and it doesn't make sense to invest more money, then they wouldn't spend the money, and the money would never leave the reserves. So all we're doing is allowing for them to do that evaluation, and there's some money set aside for it, with no guarantee they're going to spend it. If we give direction that they see A/B comparison, cleaned up versus as is. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I would just assume, are we going to see that, or are we just going to know next year that this was spent or cleaned up, or are we going to see a real estate assessment? That's just where I said, if they come back. If we approve this, we're just approving the demolition and site cleanup. Are we approving it with that? We're going to have the assessment first?
I think we can give staff that direction. They've heard the conversation. So they won't proceed with cleanup until they've got that analysis, and they can come back with a quick report to us saying, here's what we'd likely get for it as is, and here's what we'd like to get for it if we tidied it up and made it safe and cleaned up the site. And then we can decide, you know, to let them have at it one way or the other. But again, we put the estimate in the budget, and us pulling it right now doesn't make any material change to our budget this year. So again, I think staff can come back and give us that report.
Yeah, I agree. I'm satisfied with that.
Councillor Meredith?
Yeah, I'd feel more comfortable if we slapped a for sale sign on it, and then this comes back to council for approval to demolish if that's the way we're going to go. Thank you.
Councillor McDonald?
Thank you. I'd like to move on, please, to page 206, the replacement existing barriers along the roadway through Little Lake. Is it necessary?
Are we working? Perfect. through your worship, to Councilor McDonald. Yes. So what I've noticed when driving through Little Lake Park on either entrance from Yonge Street and from King Street, especially King Street, you have the incline hill there. Now, or if a car was coming the opposite way, obviously we had one closer to King Street this past summer where a car, there was a medical distress call, drove into the tree. So if we don't block the tiered seating system that we put in and put those safeguards up, we could end up having a situation like that. Now, understanding it, it's only a 40-kilometer-an-hour zone, but reality is people don't travel through there at 40 kilometers an hour. So having those safeguards in place, my professional opinion, we would suffer if we didn't put those safeguards in. There was obviously old cedar posts put along there years ago. Some have been replaced, some have not. They really don't stand with what we need in those places, especially at the high traffic areas. That section.
Clarification, if I may. This says replacing existing barriers. Are you actually proposing additional barriers as well?
So there was existing posts, just cedar posts along the side there. Once we did a bit of work there this past summer, removing sightline issues and sort of tiered that out so that coming from the parking lot, there was more accessible for people to see and for pedestrians and car traffic. So we are replacing that with an M or W style rail system. So that $150,000, I projected that we'd be able to get about 480 meters of W rail. The attenuating terminals, which are the end units that they're designed through the TAC group through an OPS spec, you're looking at approximately $8,600 a piece. So if you have 4 of those on 2 sections, you're 34,000. And then it's about $250 a linear meter for the M rail installed.
And I'll caution council too, that now this is being brought to our attention, it's in the public forum. We opt to not put this in, and we've opened up this new seating, and a car, somebody has a medical emergency, foot on the gas pedal and plows through the folks that are sitting there. And we didn't support putting this in. I wouldn't want to be our deductible. So this is one of the problems once we know about something, we can't unknow it. So I'd caution council against anything where staff tells it's a safety issue. We have to yield to staff on those matters, in my opinion, even if you don't like the number. Councillor Ball?
Yeah, I was just wondering if there's cheaper alternatives. I feel like with the amount of speed bumps in there, you'd have to be driving a monster truck to get over 40 kilometers, but that's just me. I'm not sure if this product that you're talking about sounds great, but is there not something that we can put in that isn't $150,000?
Sorry, through your worship to Councillor Ball. Again, Mr. Fuller was speaking to what different specs are needed where, and in those particular sections, there's regulatory requirements based on how far things drop off on the side of the road, what type of an area you're in. So we are bound by those regulations. So in these particular areas, again, where Mr. Fuller noted, sort of on the entrances, will be the focus here. Everything in the middle is to a smaller, lesser degree in terms of requirements. And so, that's where the cedar posts, again, may be sufficient enough, but no, the focus would be the 2 areas like he spoke to on the entrances. Those are the safety issues, those are the hazards, and we are bound by regulatory requirements on what type goes in.
Thank you for clarifying that we're bound to that. I appreciate that.
To Councillor Ball's point, though, I mean, again, we're not engineers here, but would a Jersey barrier, those linked ones, like, you know, they hook into each other, the concrete formed Jersey barriers, would that be cheaper? You know, because you use those things on the 400 and they'll stop anything almost. Would that be cheaper than what we're proposing? I don't know the price difference.
Through your
Maybe
worship-
uglier, but
Through your worship to members of council, yeah. First of all, as someone with a parks background, yeah, I would never recommend those going into a park. But just the aesthetic, yeah, it doesn't really necessarily give you the much of a park vibe. But in terms of cost, Mr. Fuller might be able to speak to that in terms of the comparative cost per linear meter.
So in regards to the Jersey wall, those are the ones that you're speaking of beyond any of these. Whoops, are we better now? Okay, sorry. Those are for temporary work zones. Those are not to be used in a design scape. Those are only for temporary conditions. Any ones that are put down the median of a highway are engineered with footings. So that's the difference between those two. Costing wise, you would either purchase them, which I'm gonna probably, I don't want to assume, but they're not cheap. Or there's rentals, and that's why there's only really one company here in Ontario that provide that, it's Powell, is that cost would be a rental. And like I said, they're only for temporary use. So.
fair enough, just throwing it out there to see if there was another option. I know aesthetically, those W things, you see them everywhere. With
Right.
those crash things that peel it off so it doesn't impale you and decapitate you when you hit it, but fair enough. The cost is the cost. Yeah, right. Counselor Ball?
Thanks. I'm moving on now to the garden upgrades. I'd like to remove that entirely. I think that with all the upgrades we're doing in there, that's what people are going to be focusing on. The gardens can maybe wait till next year when they will be appreciated more. I think that everyone's going to be looking at the beautiful new seating and roof and music in the park, and this maybe can wait.
Through your worship to Councillor Ball, can you clarify, sorry, because there are two projects that involve gardens in Little Lake Park. Are you referring to the community garden project?
Yeah, I was referring to the community garden. I think that the other one can wait as well, but it looks like it's more maintenance than just aesthetic. So you can speak to that if that's not correct. So I didn't include that. I wouldn't like to see either of them, but that's, I think just right now, the community garden. If we can maybe work with community groups, I'm more apt in trying to get community support for gardens than I am for pouring a bunch of money into it. So that's where I've been this whole time, and that's where I will continue to, hopefully we can reach out to community partners for that type of stuff instead of trying to put it into a budget.
Through your worship to Councillor Ball, yeah, thanks for clarifying. Because yes, the other project is not just in reference to the tiered garden, sort of in the middle of Little Lake Park that is literally falling apart and down. But it's also the stairs, that two sets there, two more beyond, that are all, everything from underneath is disappearing quickly. So there's structural issues with all of that. So those are all must replaces. The 20,000 you see here listed for the community garden itself is really just intended to upgrade that, right? The park has really seen some positive and some pretty substantial investments over the last few years. So it seems some good upgrades. Staff has noted that one on the list, as does the Parks and Trails Master Plan, as needing a complete sort of rethink, we'll say, or in terms of the design and how it's managed. So the proposed project there was to provide some funding to start that process.
Thank you. And I would also maybe speak to the trees as well. Maybe there's a grant that we can get for trees. I know that there's individual grants, but I don't know if there's municipal grants to be getting trees. I know we spoke about this last year as well, so I don't know if anything has happened in a year where now we are eligible for grants for trees, but I think that I would like to see these removed for now.
Through your worship to Councillor Ball, yeah, my response would be similar to last year. And I would say that we did make some fairly good progress on that this year. So you'll note that last year's ask was 18,000 and we've reduced that this year as a result of the progress we did make.
Councilor McDonald? And just by the way, mentioning you, we haven't removed anything. This is
No.
just, we're just talking right now. No one's
That's
taken
right.
a list of deleting things, just to be clear, because we haven't made that ask of council, all right?
Seeking clarification. On page 211, the resurfacing. I'm wondering when we're doing the resurfacing, is there plans for sidewalk consideration at that time? For instance, on Curry Road or on Victoria Street? Is that possible that we envision a sidewalk and, well, especially on Victoria Street?
If I can jump in there, Your Worship, to Councillor McDonald. So speaking to Victoria Street specifically, it's a rural cross section right now with shallow ditches. It's not a full urban cross section with gutters and storm sewer throughout it. So in order to convert it over to sidewalks is a little more challenging. There's also some grade issues. So the way the resurfacing budget is currently is not to add sidewalks to it. That would be essentially, that'd be a service level change. And much like you'll see for the sidewalks on Dominion, which are proposed as a service level change, those are additional to our current one. Yes, it's a gap in our network and it's identified in our transportation master plan as an area that should have sidewalks. It's not part of the replacement program. It's a new sidewalk, so it's a new ask. So could there be sidewalks there? Yes, but it's not as easy as just attaching it. This is speaking to the paving specifically.
So it's not feasible to make the road wider with similar to Fuller Avenue, how they have the sidewalk, the biking, it's just a paved shoulder.
Through your worship to Councilor McDonald, it's on at face value, it's not quite that simple. That cross section through Victoria Street has a hill and has slopes on either directions, and there's minimum offsets from traffic that you need the sidewalk to be. It's a little bit different than a paved shoulder, so that's where you start to get into the category again of a reconstruction project that takes a little more thought than just a simple shave and pave project, as we call it, to redo the sidewalk. So that you'd likely then have to get an engineering consultant on board to do a more detailed design on what that might look like and what impacts it has to the drainage of the properties and whatnot. So it's a higher level of a project that we typically deal with on the recons.
Thank you. And I might as well finish my list here, or I just have the last page on 216 regarding street lighting. Oh, you want to retain a consultant to review existing street lighting network to identify gaps. $100,000 for another consultant, and is that not something we could do ourselves?
Through your worship to Councillor McDonald. It's not necessarily something we could do internally. Consultants here in this area have expertise that we don't house internally here, and they definitely have access to a greater amount of technology and equipment, and not just making an assessment. This project essentially is not to just make an assessment, but the goal would be here to help, again, try to build a plan for the future so that we know where we need to prioritize going forward. Years back, there was a lot of the lights themselves were converted, say, to LED and upgraded, but a lot of the rest of the infrastructure received little to no upgrades along the way. So we have, this is one of the areas we have, really do have a lot of aging infrastructure here. So we see value in bringing in an expert to provide us that guidance to help develop a long-term plan. So again, we prioritize correctly, and we know what type of investments are needed over the next 5-10 years.
All right, if that's it for the questions, then, right, after that, we'll go to request to remove things, and we'll just do the straw poll on that, and we can get through this one.
Yeah, I kind of missed a few things, but it's not a big deal. Tiffin Park, the I guess the warning track, we did have, there was an ask in last year's budget, $15,000. Was that completed last year?
Through your worship, Councilor Maris, it was not, and I believe it was in the fall this year, early fall, that staff brought a report back to council, sort of explaining where we were at with that project. We had went out and received bids that were far over our anticipated budget, not just for that, but for the redress of the ball diamond at Pete Peterson. So staff came back, again, I believe it was early fall, to council, brought a report that stated, excuse me, we were looking to and receive council approval to transfer the funds from that project to the Pete Peterson redress project, so that that one was able to at least get completed. And then it made clear that we'd be back here now this year for looking for additional funds to actually complete that project. So that field now, which is the town of Midland's arguably nicest field, one that gets the most use. A lot of the youth are the ones that use that. It attracts tournament usage as well. That ball field right now is in need of a redress for the infield itself. It's again, it's a clay diamond too, making that the redress and rejuvenation of a warning track more expensive. But so it needs both the redress. So we would be looking to do both of those projects at one at the same location here now.
Okay, thank you. I must have, I don't recall going back to this in this year's, that's why it took me by surprise here, because I see it down twice, but obviously, so this is an add-on because of the budget restraints. You needed more funds because it was under budgeted, correct? Yeah, okay, thank you.
All right, so the hack and slash list, Councilor Meredith, you want to start? Yeah. Unless there's any other questions about things, now it's just about, we'll just get the straw poll on things that we want to eliminate or defer. Then we can get through this one and on to the next one.
So I'm going to go back to the building, Old Parks demolition of that. So 90 and 30,000 for 120K. Put that right up for sale and see what we get. So that's down the list. There are.
Okay, so
I guess
that one, we agreed that the staff are going to do a comparative analysis, A/B, versus selling it as is or selling it as a clean lot, and come back to council.
Yeah, did we have a majority on, we were gonna leave it as is, and, because I wasn't comfortable with that, so, I'd rather it be slashed.
Well, we don't know the answer to the question yet, whether it makes
Oh, so you're-
sense, right? So
Okay, so
we just leave it
you're
in
asking-
there. If it turns out that we can sell it for more money, or it isn't worth cleaning, we're still gonna get the same dough for it, then we just don't spend the money and it stays exactly where it is in the reserve. Again, it's not a new tax. We're not, this is,
Yeah, so what are you asking me here? So,
there's no point in removing it. I think staff have clear instructions that they're gonna go and get a market assessment of how much we get for the lot, market condition based.
Yeah.
As is, and let the guy that buys it clean it up versus how much we would get for it if we provided a nice flat fenced for sale lot, and see if it's worth the money that we're being proposed or asked to spend on it.
right, okay. So there
And
was a-
we'll get a report back at some point. Won't take long for that one, I wouldn't think.
All right, so we already, I know, we never talked to the pickup truck. Is this end of life pickup truck? Is this a new truck that's going into our fleet? I don't think we've talked about that for 95,000.
Through your worship to Councilor Meredith, there are not any new vehicle or equipment asks. So that everything that is on the list you see is they are replacements only. So if you could be specific for which truck, if you have a question about it, I'd be happy to answer.
Sorry, I think there's
Well,
only
there's
one on
one.
the list here, unless there's more that I don't see. There's, it's a pickup truck. Hopefully, purchased locally.
Sorry, so if you're referring to truck number 7707 for parks there, at 95,000, yeah, that would be, again, a replacement truck. And it's at end of life. You can bring up more info on it here. I believe it's a 2011. 2011, this vehicle currently is right now, yes, that's up for replacement.
Do we know the mileage?
Yeah, that can be looked up. However, it, for our usage purposes, it doesn't tend to be that a vehicle, a pickup truck, say, it needs to be deemed end of life as a result of excessive mileage, right? The staff are not leaving town with these vehicles very often. Unless to pick something up or drop something off. Outside of that, they stay within the town. So it's more so because of the type of use they see. It's heavy, weighted. It's a lot of equipment in and out, materials in and out. So it's the type of use that they see, and it's for the duration that we have it for. So again, being a regular pickup truck, industry standard would be somewhere in the 7 to 9 year range retention schedule. Again, this being a 2011, you're far outside of that now.
Okay, thank you. So I don't know what you want me to do here. I can tell you what I'm not gonna vote on. So if that's what you're asking me to do. So I'm not in favor of the meeting area. Not in favor.
Okay, let's deal with one at a time. Because
Okay.
we don't have individual requests here. So
Yeah,
meeting
so-
area, show of hands for people in favor of the meeting area. 5, okay, meeting area, next. Oh,
Just-
Madam CFO,
Just to be clear, in favor of.
in favor of keeping it on here,
Keeping it in the plan.
correct.
Thank you.
And I'll use that language for the
Thank you.
whole list here. So in favor means keeping it in the plan. As opposed to suggestions to remove it. Okay, next.
Obviously the parks, not in favor of the 77007 pickup truck.
Okay. All in favor of keeping the pickup truck as requested for parks? No, okay, no pickup truck right now. 2011 truck needs to live another year. Next,
Next, I'm not in favor of the tree replacement program this year. 14,000.
all in favor of replacing the trees for $14,000. It's kind of a yearly commitment. We keep replacing trees, especially, I'll remind people that a lot of them being decimated from that whatever that creature is that kills all our trees in our parks.
Correct. The emerald ash borer is one example. There are many more. we make a concerted effort to put a variety of species in, so that when you have something like the ash borer that targets a particular species, you've got a variety of species scattered throughout the town so that all of your trees aren't impacted negatively. You know, and on this one, again, I will add that generally speaking, health-wise, the more trees, the better. Again, I know I am a parks guy, but, you know, I would always support more trees, and I would urge council to do the same.
I can't believe I'm doing this, but I'm going to quote Jonathan Main, former councillor here and absolute tree aficionado, now works for SSEA. Can't believe I'm doing this. The best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago. The second best time to plant a tree is today. So keeping our you know, canopy in town. I know it's $14,000, but these are the kind of things that take years to produce something. We're not planting mature trees, right, with the big spade. These are little saplings. So at any rate, all in favor of keeping the trees? It's a loaded question. Who hates trees? All right. So we're keeping the trees. Yeah. Who hates $14,000 trees? All right. So trees are in still. Please carry on.
Thank
That's
you.
what this is all
And the
about.
reason I put the trees in there, because I'm pretty sure we haven't maxed out our budget every year on trees, so. Sidewalk condition assessment of 25,000, and then the street lighting assessment for 100,000. We'll just group them together. You could do individually if you'd like.
Yeah.
Not
So
in
this
favor of that.
sidewalk condition assessment, 25,000. It's a consultant thing. All in favor of getting the sidewalk condition assessment? All right, it's gone. And the next consultant-based one, which is our, oh,
Sorry, through your worship, if
Yeah.
if you don't mind, I wasn't aware that that one, there wasn't any question on at all, so I wasn't aware. If you don't mind, if I could speak to that.
oh yeah, it's not really binding what we're doing here. It's just a straw
Right, I
poll
know
thing.
it's,
Yes, go ahead, please.
But thank you, yeah, if you don't mind, the sidewalk condition assessment is, you know, very, very beneficial in terms of us being, as a municipality, being able to provide a defense at a later date. Liability wise, making this fairly small investment every few years, pays dividends in terms of lawsuits and issues later. We receive more trip and falls and slip and falls on sidewalks than anything else by far, right? It's standard really for municipalities in general. This type of an investment provides you a much stronger defense again, and there's actually some new technology out that we're quite excited to invest in and bring into town, because really it can, instead of there's new technology now that essentially can look at each individual plot or unit. And so whereas in the past you may have deemed a section from a block to a block, say, needing to be replaced, now you can more specifically narrow down to, it's actually within that block, just these 4 panels, say. And so you're not replacing the whole stretch, you're replacing just those 4 panels, and you've noted them appropriately. Again, followed the proper procedures so that you have reduced your liability. So again, I didn't know that that one was on the table. I just wanted to speak to that for a minute.
Councillor Bald.
I just wanted to, comment that there's often that red or the orange stuff where the cracks are. And that's a good thing, for people who walk a lot on the, sidewalks that aren't all that great, but there it is. So that's good.
And through your worship, that is, staff has responsibilities to do annual sidewalk inspections internally. So we do that, and the requirement is to, hazards again are marked orange. So it's now safer for any individual traveling that sidewalk, and it is now deemed in a state of repair. So again, it has a liability benefit as well.
Okay, so to Councillor Meredith's point, and then we'll go to Madam CFO. Staff do those kind of things and spray paint cracks and obvious things that need to be repaired, but this sidewalk condition assessment is something over and above that you couldn't do? Even if we paid you to walk all the sidewalks in town? I guess it's a little unclear to us on what's different about this assessment than what your staff does when they see a crack and then they spray paint it.
Yeah, through your worship to members of council, yeah. Our annual sidewalk inspection is in fact that. We have someone walk every single sidewalk once a year. And again, that's a regulatory requirement. So we perform that inspection as we are required to do. This is above and beyond that. Again, it uses technology that we don't have to assess beyond just, our assessments are, when you're walking it, or you're not necessarily going to catch everything that this will. You're looking for gaps, you're looking for cracks, you're looking for trip hazards, right? Often, this technology will pick up other things, angling issues that are surrounding it. Mr. Fuller can speak to it in greater detail, the process there, if need be. But again, you're often getting two different types of data there from our annual internal sidewalk inspection versus this one.
Fair enough. Counselor McDonald.
Well, actually, I had that one scratched as well. I thought it was something that, and now I have, and then you convinced me that it is required to with the new technology, but then you said that it's being done anyway by a person. So now I don't know where to go with it. Funny, on that page, I just wrote, assign it to the Active Transportation Committee. I've walked just about every sidewalk. I can tell you where some of them are repaired or need repair. But you have to sell me now on how the 25,000 is a good spend.
Madam CFO, I think I bypassed you last time we were going around in a circle on this one.
Thank you, Your Worship. I was just going to make a note. So this type of assessment is valuable in doing our asset management as well. And so our asset management regulations have really evolved over the last 10 or so years. And with that, the condition assessments on our road network, on, you know, those visible assets, the BCA, on our buildings, that's all data that we use to basically look at the life cycle of assets and sort of that deterioration curve. When is it best to do that preventative sort of maintenance work? How do you prolong the life of assets? It all sort of goes into that analysis. So it is valuable information is basically the point I wanted to make.
Is that the same argument to support the street lighting assessment? Okay, because we didn't hear that before, but.
And if you don't mind, Your Worship, just add again, and to your question, Councillor McDonald, that our assessment is that is done by often a student, and they're at times sprinting up and down the sidewalks, marking hazards, writing them down. This provides you, again, a detailed plan and where to prioritize, where your largest hazards are. And they do that, it's all done digitally, so that it's making that assessment and calculating where your largest hazards are, where you should prioritize it. It provides you the plan at the end. Whereas our internal assessment, again, it doesn't allow you to do that. It just, you have a list of, I have hazards, and we've marked them. You know what I mean? So they really are getting at two different things. It's the asset management side that this provides you what assets need to be your focus.
Thank you. I'd be certainly interested in seeing that report.
All right, so we'll re-ask that question then. All in favor of the sidewalk condition assessment? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay. Make it so. Next. We'll do with the lighting one. Okay, all in favor, can I just call this one, or is any more yakking about it? No? Okay, so all in favor of keeping the street light assessment? All right, we'll be in the dark for a year on that one. Okay. And of course, we expect to see these things revisited. You know, they're going to come to the next budget or what have you. Councilor Meredith.
So we didn't talk about this digital radio upgrade, all departments, 145,000. There's, so far, I think all the and there's a couple asks here. I guess the street lighting and the truck hasn't gone through. Everything else is approved. Is that correct? Right now? Right. So, um, I'm gonna bring, well, we haven't talked about this digital radio, upgrade. So, and I know that it does kind of interrelate with the fire, and had that, talk with Mr. Renault, but I'm looking for additional, tax supported reserve savings. So, if there isn't any equipment here that you can take off the block, I went up and you say you need all the, all your asks, and we are, asking departments, going through this and tomorrow, for some cuts. So the only thing I could see right now that hasn't been discussed is 145,000 for digital radio upgrades. So maybe you can comment on your case on that one. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Worship. Through you to Councilor Emeritus, this would upgrade all of our mobile and portable radio equipment through operations, parks, transit, water, wastewater, to jump onto the digital band with the Midland Fire Department, which would double our capacity for channels and frequencies, so to say, and allow an emergency situation for all of our fleet and personnel to be on the same channel, not only with us, but with Penetang if needed, and I believe Simcoe County, as well as they upgrade to digital as well.
Councilor McDonald, yeah, go ahead.
Thank you. Could you give me an example of what might happen where we would need everybody on this digital radio? Something realistic.
A tornado,
Run that by me again.
a tornado.
So just to be clear, right now, if there was an event like that, fire has its own radios and frequencies, and the town ones don't talk on it. So fire would have to come, basically lend a portable radio to the Parks Department or whoever's going to be in charge of the command center, and they'd be operating these two radios. By putting the whole municipality on the same set of frequencies, all selectable on their digital radio set, and everyone having compatible equipment, we're all on the same frequencies and using the same gear. So it doesn't really make sense to do upgrade one without the other. And there's bulk purchasing when you buy a whole bunch of new car sets and handhelds and the chargers and all the things that go with them at the same time. So although it kind of stings a little bit, it's kind of a package deal, and it makes sense to do it all at once rather than piecemeal. I only know because I've had to do this before with the police stuff, and it's sometimes easier just to rip the Band-Aid off and just do it. Okay, so we got the radios. Do we keep the radios? All in favor of keeping the radio upgrades? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yep. Okay, radios stay. 10-4. All right. Anything else on this one, or are we? All right. Councillor Ball.
Thank you. I want to half the desks and half the community garden. The desks,
The desks for, what was it, 10,000?
5,000 for that, and then the community garden, 10,000 to that instead of 20.
So the community garden, it just so I'm orienting myself, that's where people go and grow fruits and vegetables, and they basically farm on some land down Little Lake Park, and they take care of the little plot. And they're usually quite protective of their little zones.
There's a lot of people that are in the community that have the expertise to expand and want to expand. And I think we should include them in being able to maybe fundraise the other half of this. I think that's a good start to engage some community commitment there.
Well, I'd actually go so far as to say we don't spend any money on that and put it entirely in the hands of the people who benefit from it and who use it. And, you know,
I was being nice, half and half. Boost the morale of the community garden, boost the morale of the firefighter, and boosting some morale, okay?
Okay, fine. I'm good with half, but I mean, realistically, I've had a look at it and it looks kind of junky and nasty down there. But again, I don't really know that if it's up to us to maintain that, if we're giving it to the people to use and anyway, whatever. I'm not, this is like, it's irrelevant, this amount of money, and when we're talking about our, tens of millions of dollar budget, but so I won't dwell on it. Counselor Bald?
Okay, well, the dog park is right near the thing, and people go there, and it's lovely. You don't need anything. They do it all. They have vegetables, flowers, everything. So, for us to say, oh, well, you better, you know, get some money and all that. No, they love what they do, and they're right near the dog park, even though the dogs bark all the time. So that is very a very I think it's been there for a long time. On top of that, but it's the same people who come every summer because I'm there as well. So for us to go there and say, oh, let's clean this up, do this. No, they're doing their thing. So that's my
Just to be clear, you're in favor of spending zero of our reserve on this and just leave it the way it is, right?
well. I would hope that we would, if we have some extra money, we can, ask those people, do you need some money, in the spring? And I guess they might say, okay, but they do their thing, and they don't really need a lot of stuff. So
Okay, so the compromise that's on the floor is to drop it from 20K to 10K. That an accurate assessment? Councilor McDonald?
Yes, I just wanted to elaborate on a little bit. Yes, the volunteers at the garden are passionate gardeners. They do a wonderful thing. And I know that it does need some tender loving care that takes money, like the chicken wire fencing, and there's things that we can do to encourage them to keep up their good work. So I'm okay with the 10,000.
All right, some skin in the game. So all those in favor of reducing this to 10,000, but keeping it in the budget? All right. So we're reducing to 10,000. That's what we're asking right now. All right. Okay, fine. For the chicken wire. Nothing worse than having your veggies eaten by the rabbits. Rascally rabbits. Okay, there we are. Yeah. Madam CFO?
Sorry, so was that an approval to reduce by
Yeah, to
10,000?
10. Yeah, I broke the tie and yeah.
So I just made for a little wrench here, but so if you look at this project, the $20,000, and you look across, right now we've got that project funded from Parkland Reserve. So that's money that we are legislatively required to spend every year, right? And so the percentage is honestly escaping my mind right now because I'm a little bit tired. I think it's 5%. I'm looking to manager of director of community growth. And so we will have to pick another parks project. I wanted council to be aware when you see this slightly change. If this line item goes down to 10, we will pick another Little Lake project likely and fund 10,000 of it from that reserve. So you're still saving money. I wanted you to be aware of the end result will look a little bit different than what you see. That's all.
So we're not really reducing we're not pulling out only 10. We have to pull 20 out. That's what you're saying.
Well, no, so you are still saving 10 from your tax reserve because what we're gonna do now is take 10,000 out of that tax reserve column and move it over into the park land reserve column.
Well, there's plenty, there's plenty need in Little Lake Park for something that could
There
use
is.
10 grand. So
like I said, I'm just more wanted you to be aware that the end result will look a little bit different. That's all.
All right, that's fair. So it feels like a win. And the carrots will remain. All right. What's next? Oh, the desks. Yes, the desks. Is that the last one? The desks. Duct tape and binder twine or some new IKEA desks? What are we proposing here? Eliminating, discounting, half. All right. So 5,000 towards replacement desks and office setup. 5,000 going once. All those in favor? 5,000 going twice? All right, we got it. 5,000. Happy shopping. All right, are we done this one? Okay. It is 7:04. We're so not gonna, anyway, keep on trucking. What's next?
Doing great. We're making
Okay,
progress.
all right.
So I will just review those 4 items, just so everybody's aware, just before we move on. So the $95,000 pickup truck came out. The streetlight assessment at 100,000 came out. The community garden was reduced by 10,000, so 10,000 left in the budget. And then the desks reduced by 5,000 left in the budget. So again,
That's- yep.
those are coming out of 2024. We will be putting them in 2025 as part of that 10-year plan.
I would fully expect to see them back in, because these are boomerang cuts, I like to call them. So, very good.
So we've just got the NSSRC and transit, I believe. And as I mentioned, there's a couple capital items that I will do my best to speak to because Trish isn't here. And then I'm hoping to quickly review the 10-year plan and wrap up for the evening, if everybody's good with that. Start fresh in the morning. Yes. Okay. NSSRC, we've got 4 items, and transit, we've only got 1. So I think we can do it.
All right, I'll start with the North Simcoe Sports and Rec Center portable generator, the $500,000. I'd only be okay with this if we found funding from county and our neighboring municipalities who would all be benefiting from the standby backup generating power that this thing would enable us to have. When we got our tour, I totally believe in the need for it. I can't square having Midland ratepayers floating the entire bill for this bad boy. The county needs to be part of this, maybe even the province, but definitely our neighbors, because it would be their loved ones that would be laying in the morgue or whatever we use this for in some horrible circumstances, as well as Midland people. So this one I would like to see, we can leave it in the budget approved, doesn't matter, as long as it's contingent on finding funding where Midland either pays its proportionate share or, potentially nothing if we can find that unicorn out there. But realistically, I'd like to see some funding alternatives before the money's actually spent. So from my perspective, this is reserve stuff. So it's fine for me to stay in the budget, knowing that staff know that they're not going to go and buy this thing until we get a report back that shows the contributions from other sources to offset, draining our reserves entirely for it. So that's just my position on it. On that one, I didn't have any issues with the other asks, but so maybe council, we could talk about that one while I'm yakking about it right now. Councillor Ball?
Thank you. Yeah, I agree. We should be able to have some sort of funding from the county or from the province for this, especially being a designated emergency evacuation center. As a designated emergency evacuation center, we definitely should have a generator. I mean, the fact that we don't boggled my mind then, it boggles my mind still. But definitely, I agree. It needs to be funded not just from Midlands. So that is something that I know that you have already been looking at. You did say that you were looking at that through the county previously when we spoke. So I don't know if anything's come of that, or if, again, looking at our partners around surrounding municipalities, but I'm not sure how much support we're going to get just based off of the contribution to the rec center as is. So we'll see.
Councillor Marinus?
So I'm in agreement with that. We need some partners on this one, but I'm not comfortable leaving it in. I think we should yank it right out until we find those partners. Thank you.
Okay, so I'm content with having it vanish from this, knowing that we'll get a report and some new funding options coming back from the rec center. Hopefully sometime this year, so we can consider in the next budget. Councillor Danner?
Just gonna say, this was on the table before, some years ago. I don't know what happened. It must have fallen through. I forget, but this generator was on the table and we couldn't get anybody to come to the table, I believe, to split the costs.
Chief Renault?
Your worship, if I could just speak to that, I think it's important to note that in the event that something were to happen where there was an evacuation, as used earlier for a tornado that went through, we would be dependent on the county sending someone to go and get the generator, find a driver, bring it to us, set it up, us finding an electrician to hook it up, and then get going. The other thing that's important to note is in the event that there's a fire at the hospital or at the villa, they would want to come to this location as their evacuation center. So as long as we fully understand that, I just thought it was important to note that the expectation is, should they have to evacuate their facilities, they'd be coming there. And if we don't have the backup power, then it's no longer an evacuation center. Thank you.
100% agree. I don't think anyone argues the merits of having it. It's just begrudgingly having to fully pay it ourselves out of Midland's tax money when we're clearly not the sole beneficiary and we are not the designated savior for North Simcoe. So yeah, that's where I'm kind of torn on this one. I'd like to see us exhaust all of our efforts. Councillor McDonald and then Councillor Meredith.
I am boggled that we don't have this generator that is necessary. I think we proceed with getting it done and then hope we never have to use it. We did just, I was looking for my notes. What did we just approve because of the emergency, the tornado item? What was that?
Radios.
Radios. Yeah, we got radios, but we can't tell them to go anyplace because we don't have a generator. Think about it.
Bring your Hondas. We'll just do an all call for everyone's little Honda gen set. Councillor Meredith.
Thank you, Mayor Gordon. So we do have, I just want to make sure we do have the emergency hookup for behind the rec center for a portable generator to be shipped up. Is that correct? So when they do come up, and I did get, you know, if the roads are clear and so far, I did go through an experience with this 2 years ago when I was helping up set up Pumpkin Inferno. We were in Penetang and they lost power and they had a generator with you know, I think in the morning I showed up. That evening there was a generator there sometime hooked up to power. We were back in business. So as long as those hookups are there and you can get the generator, and there's companies out there that send them up because we didn't have a problem getting a generator. And I'm sure if there was a call for help from an electrician, a certified electrician in the community, everybody would come together and help. So looking for an electrician probably won't be an issue. So I'm good with until we, you know, it's not just us we're servicing, we're servicing, you know, a lot of people around us. So it has to be a shared effort. Thank you.
Councillor Ball.
I think a more likely emergency situation would be an ice storm that we've seen creeping across Canada lately. And that would be the case where there would not be an ability for somebody to come on our roads to get a generator here. So that's a more likely emergency, I think, than a tornado would be. And in that case, you would not have a generator because there wouldn't be the ability to get on the road and get one here. So if you're losing power to half of Midland, all of Midland, our power grid is not fantastic already. So you're looking at an ice storm sweeping through here. What are we supposed to do with that?
Chief Renault.
And again, just to add, we have to remember that it's one thing to get a portable generator to power a couple of household pieces of equipment or things you need in the home. to power this location, you need a certain size. In the county, there's one. So I just want to make sure that we fully understand the big picture. We're reliant on one, and hopefully it's going to come to us. And to Councillor Ball's statement, if the roads are impassable, if we can't get people there, that all comes into effect. So as long as we have a full understanding, by all means.
Yeah, it's one of those, what are the odds, right? It's just a game of risk. Because you're right, the best way rental, job site Jen said isn't gonna do it for the Sports and Rec Center. We all get that. Okay, so what effectively I got on the floor is like I'm fine with leaving it, but Council Emeritus, would like to see it gone. It's the same difference in my mind. Let's reject this from our spend right now pending other funding sources. Let's at least try those and exhaust that. If that means next year we're back in the same boat, we've already asked everybody, they're telling us too bad, we're not paying you. Then maybe we got to eat it next year. But for this year, I'd like to see us exhaust those things before we just rubber stamp this. So what's on the floor right now is that this is pulled from this year's agenda or this year's budget pending other funding sources, expecting to see it come back in the next budget. All those are in favor of that one? To pull it and see it come back next year with hopefully a report and other funding sources. Okay, so Dave, you know what you got to do to now next year, add it to your list. And if you need any political support, which I suspect you will, and that will likely require maybe a letter from me and a resolution of council going out to our neighboring municipalities, asking them to co-fund this. You tell us what you need from us, and I'll happily comply because I would love to see this thing approved next year with some funding partners. I don't mind paying my quarter or my fifth. So we'll leave it with you to see what you can do. I believe in you. Okay, this is a pretty short list other than that. Any other comments or questions? Councilor Meredith.
I'm just gonna ask the question. I'm okay with the roof repair, the fire sprinkler upgrades, very important. See that. The HVAC replacements, are these again end of life? Are they still working, or are we repairing them constantly? Is it like a fire hall issue where we replaced, I believe, 2 for $22,000? Where are we at with these HVAC units at the rec center?
Your worship, the Councilor Emeritus. So we have 19 HVACs at the rec center. Useful life is about 15 years. These are the last 2 we have left that we haven't replaced yet, and they're 20 years old. We could defer it another year. You run the risk of, if you end up with a repair that's going to cost you half the price of a new one, which is why we replace them before they go. So that's where we sit. These are the last 2 of the original ones to be replaced.
Perfect, thank you. So are we doing, is it safe to say we're doing two a year? Is that how we're replacing these units in the 10-year capital plan, I guess, as we go forward?
It's been 2 or 3 per year. And we'll be done them after the next 2. So then we'll have, I think it's about 8 years before we start replacing any more.
One last question. We replaced 2 at the fire hall for 22,000. These are replacing 2 for 45,000. I'm guessing these are larger units, bigger units. Is that correct?
Through worship to Mr. Council. Yeah, we've got like 3 different sizes. So it's just based on the size. That's an accurate costing for the 2 units that need to be replaced.
Just in thinking about that generator thing, rather than just letting this go until next budget cycle, if you could put together a business case, or with other staff help put together a business case to come to council, and the ask of that is that council endorse a resolution that we then send to our neighboring municipalities. There's no reason for us to wait till the fall. We could have something sent out to them this spring, so they're all well aware of it and can start to pre-plan. They may even, because everyone's got reserves to some degree. They could even, we could get approvals from our neighbors to help co-fund this thing through the midway through the year. In which case council could then approve this thing, in August or whatever. You know what I'm saying? Like, there's no I don't want to kick this thing completely down the road, but what we need is a business case that we can, as a council, meet on, make a resolution, and then have staff reach out to our neighboring municipalities based on that resolution. Does that kind of make sense? We don't have to
And-
wait for a whole year.
Yeah, and your worship, to Councillor Downer's point, this did go, it was a few councils ago. And council did approach the county and ask the county to fund it based on the fact that we were an emergency evacuation center, and the county told us no. But yes, absolutely, we can. So
Perfect. Well, I'll commit to, and Councillor Prost, soon to be Deputy Mayor Prost, and I will take that and champion a portion of that down at County Council. Be more than happy to put it on the agenda down there. Even though County Council is more reticent to spend money mid-cycle, at least we can talk about it early and maybe get it some commitment from county, or maybe they tell us no. And that'll also give us some ammo, because all of our neighboring municipalities are going to be sitting with us down there. They're going to hear the ask. So let's work on a strategy plan to move forward on this. So it's a soft no right now. But I'll commit to you that I'll work with then Deputy Mayor Prost down at the county level to try and raise awareness and get some funds committed to this thing, so we can revisit it potentially before the next budget cycle, if that's fair. Give it the old college try. All right, so that's it for that list. So the only thing we're pulling off is the 500K. And next,
Transit.
all right, so then the usual question that comes from this is, why does it need replacing now? Is it best practices, the dreaded end of life phraseology? Is it a high miler?
Yes to all of those. It's 154,000 kilometers, which doesn't sound like a lot for your household vehicle, but it's like you said before, ridden hard and put away wet. They're used every day. This is a Dodge Caravan conversion, so the internal components where we latch down, the wheelchairs wear out, the bottom fiberglass fairings are all worn out, and it doesn't look good, and it's done. It's ready to go.
I know we don't see it directly on here, but does any of this capital come from our relationship with Penetang and our shared mid-pen transit?
As far as accessible transit, no, that's an agreement we have with Community Reach for Midland only.
Thank you. Okay, no asks to remove this. Going once, going twice. All right, very good. Carry on.
Sorry, wasn't expecting that. Okay, so the last one, part of the capital plan. No, we should need to do the library first. So the last is library, and so that's on page 255. And the majority of this list is building related, which again, it is our town-owned building. And so our supervisor of facilities and fleet and everything else, he does work with the library CEO on these items. So as much as Trish isn't here tonight, if you do have any questions on the building stuff, I believe that Jim can answer. That last item is the one that I mentioned first thing this morning. So that $5,000 visually impaired machine replacement, that has completely come off the list, which would just leave the staff and public access computers. Now, I know Trish had come to council late last fall and had requested some funding for computer replacements. And so, you know, I assume that this is in addition, well, it would be in addition to that. So whatever didn't get completed last fall, she would be looking for some more funding for the public side of those computers, where I think the last fall ask was more for the staffing computers.
Thanks. And I did have a discussion with her around the bathroom renovations, and that's kind of where I was going with the town dock ones. They experience absolute disgusting things in their bathrooms, and they're not from library patrons. So they're working at trying to make the bathroom safer, easier to clean, more of a deterrent for said disgusting things, especially around biohazard. So suffice to say, I didn't take issue with any of these things. They're all kind of run of the mill, but I was curious about the bathroom renovations. And it's just one of the problems that happens when you have a publicly accessible bathroom in a building downtown open to the public, which includes some, it's not always homeless people, but lots of people that have drug addictions that aren't homeless in our downtown area. But they have been experiencing a disproportionate amount of abuse and destruction and other things in there. So that was the one that piqued my interest. The other things are all kind of run in the mill, wear and tear. So heavily used building. Councillor Ball and then Councillor McDonald.
Thank you. I just wanted to speak again on the lighting for deterring people from using in the bathroom. I did talk to Trish about this as well, so hopefully that is already on her radar, but just throwing it out there as a budget request that it should be looked at if we're renovating.
That is really cool. I did some Googling after, and it's a blue hue light that makes it very difficult to see your vein because the light's got a blue hue, but it's not so blue that you can't do your business. Councillor McDonald.
Thank you. I'm just looking for clarification on the building testing and report for 25,000.
That encompasses testing HVAC units, assessments to various mechanical boilers and whatnot that we do as part of our building condition assessment.
Did that answer your question? It was.
Is it a must or a want?
It's a must as part of our asset management plan.
Which I'll remind everybody has been forced upon us, and not necessarily in a bad way, but still forced upon us by the province. All municipalities have to comply with this stuff. So we're complying. It's costing some money. Councilor Meredith.
On these HVAC units, do we have a regular service audits coming in when sometimes, you could be on a program with local contractors, service, are these units, and I probably know the answer to this, but regularly checked, and then if that's the case, then I remember when I had, HVAC units and I'd have a problem, they'd go up and fix the problem, and they said, in 6 months, something's gonna go, you might want to look at replacing it type thing. So, and then you have this building code assessment on top of it, and that probably does the whole scope of the building, which would include, I imagine, HVAC. So, and I imagine, anyways, we're bound by the 25,000. So, but do you have regular maintenance on the HVACs? I guess is my question.
Through your worship, yes, it's twice annual, spring and fall. Preventative maintenance, filters, pulleys, belts and whatnot, they're checked twice a year.
Well, it's not on the budget, at least your budget ask. I'm just wondering about asset retirement obligation. It's something that's come up at the airport that we need to do for insurance. And I wasn't familiar with that 3-letter acronym, so we had to go Googling for it. And it's something municipal finance seems to have a new requirement for, stemming from the asset management plan. Are we impacted by ARO obligations and studies at all? Because a lot of it deals around with risk with contaminated lands and the cost to clean up and make safe after we're disposing of lands. The Parks Department, it brought me back to that for the Parks Department land and potentially other lands we dispose of that may be deemed to have contaminants. But just as long as we're just talking about the asset capital and plans, as ARO, is that anything that's on our radar?
Yes, it is. Sort of when I think of that regulation, I think of the well decommissioning that we spoke of earlier and those type of assets. Um, Not sure if the old Parks Depot would fall within that as well. But yeah, that is something that we do need to keep in the back of our minds, yes.
Okay, I just hadn't seen it listed anywhere, and it's now coming as like an imminent threat, concern with the airport and insurance and whatnot, so I wasn't sure how it managed in the municipality. But not looking to spend more money. All right, so are we good with the library and pro, Councilor McDonald?
It's in regards to the desks again, no, the computers, another additional 9,000. It says it's for staff computers, and that's what I thought we had approved earlier in the fall. It's not for public. Well, it's, the title says staff and public access computers, but the description says current staff, but we already gave the money for that, so.
Unfortunately, I don't have any other information that I could provide tonight. I'd be happy to reach out to Trish. She will be here day 3, and so we certainly could revisit at that point. For tonight, I would suggest maybe we leave it in, and if we end up having to pull it because council's doesn't feel comfortable, then I would maybe take that approach.
Councilor Ball?
Thank you. I feel like this was the exact ask already, so maybe they just haven't bought them yet and they just transferred it into here.
Yeah, the ask from this fall was 50,000, so it wouldn't, it's not the same. I'd have to go back to the motion. I mean, I'd be happy to do so if you want to give me a few minutes. But
I'm
it
comfortable to
definitely-
wait.
Yeah, it definitely was 50,000. That was just, let me look for the report.
All right, we can find out from Trish tomorrow. This is, again, this isn't material with 9,000 here, so if we decide, no, then easy peasy, they just don't do it, right? Councilor Meredith?
Sorry, through you, Mayor Gordon, I just saw my notes here from a report, the October 31st report. There was a building test report canceled for 26,144. Is that, what's the difference between that report and a building condition assessment and a building test report? Is that the same thing?
Through you, your worship, sorry, for the library.
Correct, yes.
I'd have to go back and look at that, but I can get back to you.
But it was canceled, though, right?
It was,
Councilor Meredith?
that's what I have in my, sorry.
Yeah, so maybe
and I
brought
have in my
forward.
notes, it was canceled for, there's a bunch of stuff canceled, but I just saw that one and I wasn't gonna talk about the other stuff. It was similar to the building code assessment, like for 25, this was 26,144. So I just didn't know if it was the same thing or is this two different reports? So just for our knowledge. Thank you.
What was the date of that report? Or is that the date of the project?
Well, the report came October 31st, the update report for just in our last.
Oh, okay, so it wasn't from October. That was the fiscal update
The financial report,
Yeah.
yeah.
up to October 31st. So that would have been our last meeting.
Yes, correct. So that's where the capital results were
Mhm.
on, yeah.
Yep.
So, and I just saw it here, so.
All right, Madam CFO is looking that up right now.
Anyways.
I'm gonna say, because I don't remember having a council meeting on the 31st.
No, yeah, it's the report. Yeah. Halloween, pardon?
Not on Halloween.
It would have been in November. It would have been in November.
Yes, sorry, just on the computers. So it wasn't in the initial September 27th report. It is reflected in the minutes. Unfortunately, it just says that a $50,000 budget for library equipment purchases be approved, funded from the library's equipment automation reserve. So I do think just a quick conversation with Trish, I might have some notes in my email as well. But her and I spoke just last week about updating her capital budget and removing that 5,000. So I feel confident that it is a new ask and not a duplication of the September ask. And sorry, I didn't catch all of the conversation on that last item about the BCA and the cancel of the project. Is it?
It was two corresponding numbers, and I just
Yeah.
thought if they're the same thing or two different things, one was a building test report, and this is a building condition assessment, roughly for the same amount of money. But not a big deal. It's not gonna make a difference. So just thought I'd,
Yeah. So in the Q3 report that you received just this last meeting in January, we canceled the 2023 project and essentially are rebudgeting in 24.
yeah, whatever project that was, or it's the same thing. but it doesn't matter.
It's the same thing. It's
Okay.
the same thing.
Okay, thank you.
It's not double. It's not doubled. It's the-
No,
it's
I
the
was-
same- It's the- no. It's the-
I wasn't
it's-
going there.
No. It's the it's the same project.
But
Same
where-
same source of funding.
Yeah. Yeah.
I just texted Tricia to ask about that 9K. But if I get an answer while we're still doing this, I'll let you know. Otherwise, we'll find out tomorrow. Again, we just leave it in and we can always deal with it tomorrow. I text her at odd hours. She's really good at answering me when she has no requirement to do so. Okay. Onward and upward.
So that does get us through the end of the capital budget, the 2024 capital budget. We do have an amended motion that our clerk is just finalizing that grand total. And so just to kind of give you an idea, just a moment. So just to recap, so we did start out with a $15.3 million budget. That was included in the draft budget that was released back in December. Earlier this morning, I mentioned the 3 amendments. Those are included as well. And then all of the removals or deferrals, however you want to refer to them, we end up at a total of $14,540,243. What is the difference?
14 million, you said? Is that what you said? 14
Million and $1,111. 1,111,000.
There you go. That's not too bad for a long day's work. Okay.
Now, I will say that, so again, other than that initial $20,000 soundproofing from the fire, all of the other projects are going to be slotted in year 2025. Just want to be clear on that.
Yeah, it's just a boomerang. It's coming back at us.
Right.
We're just not doing them this year.
And
See
so,
them next year.
right. And so the reason I mentioned that is because the next motion, which I'm hoping to pass tonight as well, is that 10-year plan.
All right, so I have the motion. It's a long one because it's got all of our amendments in it. This is moved by Councillor Prost, seconded by Councillor Downer. Item 4, with the 2024 draft capital budget with a total new requested expenditures of $14,540,243 be approved as amended. 1, reduce fire and emergency services capital budget as follows. Reduce fire hall window replacements, $40,000. Remove soundproofing of office area, $20,000. Remove training room furniture replacement, $10,000. Remove emergency services campus feasibility study, $150,000. Reduce exercise and wellness equipment by $10,000. Reduce crew room furniture replacement by $5,000. Remove interior door refurbishments or replacements, $12,000. Remove lower level room renovations, additional window for $20,000. 2, remove human resources employer of choice strategic plan for $60,000. 3, reduce digital government and service innovation capital budget as follows. Remove outdoor electric message board at NSSRC, 45,000. Remove new council devices for 11,000. And 4, amend the harbor capital budget as follows. Remove aluminum pavilion ceilings, 20,000, and the addition of 2,000 to the Gardens on Harbor Pier project to incorporate lighting at the base of the Trumpeter Swan. And 5, amend the operations capital budget as follows. Remove pickup 7707 in the amount of 95,000. Remove street lighting assessment in the amount of 100,000. Reduce the replacement desks and office setup by 5,000. Reduce Little Lake Park Community Garden upgrades by 10,000. And lastly, number 6, amend the NSSRC capital budget as follows, and that's to remove the portable generator in the amount of $500,000. We have had our discussion, council. Subject to any new discussion? I will call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? It's carried. All righty. That was work. All right, we're almost done for the night. So we'll pound through to the 10-year capital plan when you're ready. And tomorrow we work on the tax rate.
Yes. Number 4.
Page 318, for those of you looking for a number.
So on screen, we have basically the 10-year totals. And so again, this year 2024, that's the original value, which we just amended through that last motion. So that will change to that 14,540,243. And as I just mentioned, all but 20,000 of the 1,111,000 will get added to year 2025. And at this point, no other changes to years 26 onward. And so again, it's a 200 million plus long-term plan that we are asking council to adopt as amended. So based on those amendments that I just mentioned. Now, the adoption of the long-term plan, I just wanted to clarify, does not give staff the authority to spend anything beyond 2024. But it is useful as part of some of our grant applications. We will get the question, does council have a long-term financial plan? Has it been adopted? That sort of thing. So that's why you have the motion in before you. But again, no authority for staff to spend beyond year 2024.
I think the big call out on there is the 8.7 million for the east pressure zone tank replacement that we're going to see. That's a beaut. So yeah, there's some big ones. So this is largely, this is almost rubber stamp, like staff have put these things on the calendar. Again, we're not pre-approving these things. This is just acknowledging and aware of the pressures that we're faced with, which to a large degree drove, I think, what we did today, which was to try and tamp down some spending from our reserves. However, as we know, it is all coming back again. So we'll do this again for the next 2 budget cycles. So this is an easy motion. It simply reads that council adopt that the 10-year capital plan is presented in the 2024 draft budget as amended. So subject to any Q&A on this, there really isn't any manipulation to make, in my opinion, but that's up to council. Councillor Ball?
was just gonna say, we're gonna pray that our stocks go really high this year.
We just gotta grow. We just need to grow. Or amalgamate. Stay tuned. Counselor Bald.
I just wanted to know about the very first line, Irwin Street Distribution Dead End. Could somebody tell me about that? Thank you.
Through you, Mayor Gordon, to, who asked that question? Is that Roberta? Sorry, Roberta, Counselor Bald. So that is an existing water main that is basically exactly what it is. It's a dead end, and dead ends are an operational challenge as far as flow and constant flowing water. So that project is to essentially loop the water main and create a loop. So there's constant flow. We don't have dead spots that have issues with water quality. And also provide redundancy. If there was ever a failure, you could flow from two directions to the service. So if there was ever a failure, the outage would be limited. So
Near and dear to your heart. Living on Irwin Street. Yes. Okay. All right, council. So this one's moved by Counselor Bald, seconded by Counselor East. That council adopt the 10-year capital plan as presented in the 2024 draft budget as amended. All those in favor? Any opposed? It's carried. And we're adjourning then? All right, so do I need a motion for adjourn? No, I do. There's one here. At the back, of course it is. Yeah, you're counting on me having kept these in order all day. Oh, yes, it is. It is literally at the back. Okay, so moved by Councillor Meredith, seconded by Councillor Bald, that this special meeting of council with closed session regarding 2024 budget held on January 30, 2024, recess at 7:46 p.m. and resume tomorrow, January 31st, 2024 at 9 a.m. All those in favor? We'll get our jammies on. All right, thanks for the folks that survived this online. Thank you for bearing with us. And I don't know if the news is still on there, but my goodness, you are Derek. You're a trooper.